Ciao, sono Ginger Costa Jackson e io sono qui con Eclectic Arts Media.
Proud of it. On to the next thing. They expect like 1 million people.
There's so much music, like just the second half, it's just about twice as thick as the first half.
The better the player, the less they'll uptight.
Yeah, it's nice to keep it fresh, otherwise it gets stale.
Oh yeah, I do speak.
Very sad. Sad I can't have both.
That is a fabulous question.
And then I didn't step foot in the studio ever again.
I still have degrees, I swear.
And you're watching Eclectic Arts.
Morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I'm Mark Sugiyama from Eclectic Arts Media based here in Seattle, Washington. And thank you so much for joining me on this Tuesday, the 7th. Yeah, the 7th of November, 2023. And before we get started, I would like to thank Britta, Serena, and Zaza from the first international fun table session, which I had last Monday, the 30th of October. That was a live stream that was about, I don't know how many months in the making, but it was so great, and they definitely had a great time together. So that's still hanging out on my YouTube channel if you want to check that out later. And speaking of which, coming up, now that we're in November, I haven't really done a lot of live streams like in the evening like what we're doing now, and just strangely and coincidentally, the next ones I have are all in the evening. So coming up this Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific, I have The Night Cry, and I'm going to be featuring Andreka, who has done a live stream with me. Gosh, that was either 2020 or 2021, and her bandmate Sarah. They're a really great band, and I can't wait to talk to them on Thursday. And then on Monday, the 13th of November, I have Leah Michelle scheduled to join me. She's really a fascinating model and entertainer and everything else she has going on. So that's going to be at 6 p.m. Pacific on Monday. And if you'd like to know more about what I have coming up, please follow me as Eclectic Arts Media, one word, on Instagram. That's where I post everything first. And then some of that information migrates over to other social media platforms. If this is the first time of you joining me on my YouTube channel, if you could do me a huge favor, please hit the subscribe button as well as the notification bell. I greatly appreciate that. And if you're over on the Twitch side of things, if you follow me over there, I also appreciate that as well. So yeah, happy November, everybody. My last live stream was last Monday, the 30th. And so there are other ones definitely coming up, and I have some in-person events as always with the ballet, opera, theater, musicals, concerts, of course. I've got at least one for sure that I'm credentialed to cover next week, possibly two. And so I always spend my time between the virtual world and in-person world and films that I'll be reviewing. And I think there was some kind of film festival thing that I was supposed to be looking at. But anyway, I'm just glad to be here. I love doing the live streams. And if this is your first time joining me, if you'd like to ask my guests for this interview or anyone moving forward a question, or you have a comment, please join either the YouTube channel or the Twitch channel. You can put your comments into or your questions into the chat. And I'll incorporate those as we go along during the conversation. Please be aware that my guests do not see these comments and questions that you post. Only I see them. So if it takes a few minutes for me to get to you, it's because the flow of the conversation is going, and I will find time to put your comments in. I see actually some things are already coming in. So welcome everybody that's in the chat, especially on the Twitch side of things. Oh, hi, Susan. Great to see you. Thank you so much for joining me. That's a blast from the past in terms of how we know each other from a former Muggle job that I had. But good to see you, and thank you so much for joining me. All right, so let's get to things. I'm super, super excited about this interview. My guest today is a perfect example of what Eclectic Arts Media is all about. Perhaps you know her from her lengthy music career, recording and or performing with Fanny, American Girls, Carole King, Robert Palmer, just to name a few. Or perhaps you know her from her acting career in such films as Android, Tapeheads, and Somebody to Love, to name a few. Or perhaps you know her as a cake master from the hit TV show Cake Wars. So many different things to talk about. It is my great pleasure to welcome to the Eclectic Arts Media virtual studio, Miss Brie Darling.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, Brie. How are you?
I'm pretty darn good. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for taking the time. I certainly appreciate it.
Oh, this is always so much fun. I love it.
Awesome. So let's kind of dig into like the current things. I'm kind of currently, or not currently. What are you up to currently? Are we working on music? Are you working on cakes? Are we just relaxing? What kind of things are going on in your world right now?
I'm going to turn on a light because it feels really dark in here. But you tell
Okay.
me if it's too bright. Did that get too bright?
No, actually, since you sat back, it's actually, no, to me, it's fine.
Okay, that's better. Okay.
Yep.
Right now, I just moved to Portland, Oregon, about a year ago. So a lot of time has been spent just kind of getting resettled in a new place. And Portland is a very wonderful and musical city. So this has been fun. But I've been mostly working on my first solo record of my entire almost 60-year career.
Wow. Okay, that's got to be exciting.
It is. I'm a band guy. I've always played with bands or had at least a partner. I did a record a couple of years ago with Cherie Curry from the Runaways. And so that was a partnership. So I was getting a little closer and closer to doing it on my own. But yeah, so now this is all me. And I've always wanted to write a memoir because I think I've had a really wonderful and exciting life in the music business. It's been incredible, and I feel very fortunate. So I wanted to kind of do a memoir. So I think what this record is going to be is kind of a memoir on record.
Interesting. I love that concept. And you're right. You've had such a long, lengthy career that now it's going to culminate in these stories that are going to be on your record.
Right. So they will all have a personal perspective, but also too, it's like there's so many things to cover, like the kind of music. When I first fell in love with music, it was probably in the early to mid 60s, and there was a lot of Motown going on. And then that turned into R&B and soul music, which was different from what R&B is today. Very different. R&B of the 60s and 70s is not like so much what it is today. And then through my career, Fanny was mostly, before it was called Fanny, when it was a different band with just June and me and other players, it was more of we were doing copy tunes and Motown stuff and R&B. But then it became a rock band because of Nikki Barclay, because she was such a great rock and roll song artist. And then so many different music styles that I've experienced. So I'm trying to find a way to capture all of those things at the same time, but make it cohesive. But it is cohesive in my life, so hopefully it'll make sense to somebody else and everybody can appreciate that.
Okay, that's got to be really a kind of a daunting task because there's so much to pull from.
It is, and I think that the connecting tissue is that the stories have to be honest and heartfelt and real. And like I have one song that I completely recorded and I listened to it and I felt like there was something missing, and I'm rewriting the lyrics because it's not as honest as I really want it to be. And so I'm rewriting the lyrics and I'll be re-recording the vocal on that. But, yeah, it's interesting and it's fun, and it's, I think hopefully it'll be somewhat gratifying to finally just speak from my own voice, because I've always had to compromise, which I love. Like I said, I'm a band guy because I'm a drummer. I can't really play by myself unless you want to hear a acoustic version with just drums and vocal, which could be very interesting. But I've always been a band guy in so many bands. And this is the first time it's just stories from my own perspective. I don't have to fight with anybody to get something on the record.
What's interesting about this is I had a parallel with a guest in the Fun Table session last week she was a band person as well, and then she's been solo for a while.
Okay.
And the other gals who are also musicians were asking her about what's it been like having kind of all the responsibility that, from the album artwork to the videos to like everything kind of falls on you instead of kind of spreading it around to other band members. Are you finding any kind of pressure like that, or is it like, no, I welcome it?
Well, like for the last Fanny record, the Fanny Walk the Earth record, I early on said I'd like to do the cover art, and I did that. That's my artwork. And I didn't have anybody, giving me any suggestions or anything. And that was really nice, and I enjoyed that. I think that the the place where it gets most difficult working, and I say difficult, but it's also enriching, is when you work with somebody else and you have, different ideas about the song content or the lyrical content or the feel or about where you want it to go or how you want to record it. That kind of can become a little difficult. So now I won't have, anybody else's input on that level. I mean, of course, I'm working with two producers, both my husband, Dave Darling, who did the Fanny Walk the Earth record and who has done so many more amazing records, The Temptations, Brian Setzer, I mean, on and on and on and on, Glenn Campbell. But he's producing this record as well, along with my young nephew, who's only 28, James Bishop, who's an amazing artist and musician. And I just wanted a fresh, young input as well. So with the two of them working with me on this, I feel like I have some good perspectives to work with.
Yeah, no, I think that's it's actually very smart, because then you get you're coming out different bases that way.
Yeah, like James, my young nephew, he comes from a different world and what's going on with him and his age group. And he offered me some things that I think are invaluable. I'm always into not doing what I've always done. It's easier to do that. But I love being open to new and different. Okay.
And how, have you been working on some of these solo songs that was just years ago, or is it more like front and center within the last year that you started writing these tunes before you started recording them?
Most of them are pretty new, and they're not all mine. Like while we were working on the record, James, my nephew, played me a song just as an example of a thought, and I went, "Oh my God, that is so awesome! Can I do that?" And he said, "Well, of course, So I'm sorry, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go off on tangents. I forgot what the original question was.
No, it was more about, please go on tangents because I go on all the time. It's more about, I was asking about the kind of the time, like when did you start writing the songs that were going to end up on?
Right. Okay. One of them is a song that I wrote for the record Fanny Walk the Earth, and it didn't make it on the record. And so I am putting that on this, and I changed it up slightly, ever so slightly, and that's going on this record.
Okay. So it's, sounds like most of it's newer, but then, yeah, like you said, you have some things that are maybe have a little more.
There's some ideas that are kind of newish, and some ideas that I've had waiting to be, fleshed out. So there's going to be a few things, yeah. And
okay.
and I right now I think I'm 4 or 5 songs in, and I don't even have, I don't care how long it takes me. I'm not in a rush, I just want to make sure that when I'm done with it, I go, yeah, that's what I wanted to say. That's the story I wanted to portray, or at least part of it, because I don't think you can get a lifetime of stories or perspectives or feelings or experiences on one little format. It's going to be too hard, which is kind of cool. Maybe I'll do another one.
Yeah, this could be in some ways kind of like the first chapter of it.
Yeah, exactly. Whoa, I love that. I might just call this chapter 1. I've been thinking what to call it, and I was going to call it 73, but this year I turned 74, so I missed that one. But I like that. Seriously, chapter 1, or or maybe start in the middle, chapter something, because who's to say where's the start, where's the middle, where's the end, where's the beginning, and I like that, because that's kind of how my life is, a combo platter of, some of the things that I loved when I was a kid, I still love today. Some of the things that I loved doing and feeling and musically and otherwise as a teenager, I still feel today, but some of them come from much later. So, where's the starting point? Who knows?
Yeah, that's a great point. And to me, it's like things are definitely open-ended on either side of
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it doesn't have to be something that, that you started, a year ago, or it could have been 60 years ago, or it could have been 15 years ago, or it could be something that hasn't happened yet either.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting that you say that, because there's one song on the record. It's called "The Shorter the Track, the Faster the Train," which is all about getting older, and as we all get older, time seems to, I think, fly by super fast. And who's to say when it's going to run out? Nobody knows. And how exciting is that? It's kind of freaking exciting. It's also, it can be scary. Right now, I don't think of it as scary because I don't look at it that way, but it certainly could be, but it's a mystery. And how fun is that,
Yeah, no, I totally agree that, so I'm 53 now. And so time has, probably in the last 10 years, it just kind of went like this.
So let me ask you this.
Okay.
Let me interview you for a second. I mean, when you think back of the things that you liked to do when you were 23, is it somewhat similar to you or familiar? I mean, has your enthusiasm, and maybe not the specific thing that you want to do, but your enthusiasm for doing something in a particular direction, do you feel the same?
Interesting. In many ways, I'm actually more enthusiastic now.
Mm-hmm.
So like if we're talking about, so I was a guitar player since like about maybe I was 12, 13 years old. So when I was 23, you couldn't get the guitar in my hands, kind of a thing. I was also working a career job at that point. But it's so infused in who I am as a person. Music, it just runs through it's in my veins. You can't get rid of it. And it's interesting because as I got older, especially in the last probably 10 years and doing the media outlet, that's when the enthusiasm actually got even greater. So sometimes when I've talked to other people that I've worked with who are younger than me, they're kind of like, how do you go to all these shows and how do you do all this stuff? And I'm like, because I love it, because I'm passionate about it. Yeah. And it's not work to me at all. So I look forward to it.
Yes, I totally get that. To me, and things, change up a little bit, but this is not work. What I do is not work. It's like I get accolades and I get paid to do what I just love doing. And how awesome is that? That's just, that's not even the pay for it. The pay for it is, I think for me, the feeling of, okay, I got it. Okay. I expressed it. I understood it and I expressed it and I put it out there and I felt the reaction that told me that it was received somewhere, audience reaction, or people when they hear a record or hear a song that I write or hear a performance, whatever. And I know when I hit the mark. I know, as you probably do too, when you're in the zone. No matter how much somebody says, wow, great show, if it wasn't great for you, you know it. And I still, acknowledge that and say thank you. But when I really hit it, I know when I hit it. And boy, that's the best space in the world to be. That's the space that if I could stay somewhere, that's where I would want to stay, in that zone where I'm hitting the marks.
Absolutely. And I know exactly what you're talking about. And
I'm sure you do as an artist. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's nothing like, I'll give a really good example, even from the media side. So as a writer, someone who critiques things, when I first started covering the Pacific Northwest Ballet in 2018, I was completely out of my wheelhouse. Completely. I didn't know anything about ballet.
Where was that located?
That's here in Seattle. That's
okay.
Yeah.
Somebody was just talking. Oh, some friends of mine. You should know these people. What's the name? Incendio. Do you know about Incendio, the band?
No, I don't.
It's a wonderful a bass player, a friend of mine that I met when I first moved to LA ages and ages ago. I met her in the 70s. Lisa Carbe, a bass player, and her husband, J.P. Durand. And they have a band called Incendio, and they just did a thing, I think, for the ballet there. Just maybe it wasn't in Seattle, but it was so interesting that they did that. They wrote the music for it and performed the music, and it was just there I go off on another tangent.
No, I love that kind of thing, because that's how I have. Trust me, if you go back and look at my other live stream interviews, I have a very random mind. So things kind of go off the floor. But I remember I was really intimidated by submitting my review for that first ballet performance to the communications director. And I even put that in the email. I said, I don't know if this is what you're looking for. I just kind of wrote from the heart of what my impressions were of this performance. And not only does he read like word for word every review that he gets from the media people that work for him, he will answer those questions. He actually came back and said, Mark, this is exactly what I'm looking for, blah, 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 blah.
Wonderful. That.
Yeah. And I know that when I've done, I guess my point is that I know that when I've done a review where I've hit that mark, I'm like, yeah, this was really what I wanted to present to whoever it is. And other times I'm like, this could have been better. I kind of half-assed it, or whatever it is.
Right.
And no different than when you're playing music, when I'm doing photography. It's like, man, I didn't do good on that shoot.
Yeah, when it's right.
Yeah, totally.
Yes.
And I want to welcome Alex and Tony in the chat. Tony, good to see you. So, don't worry, you're not late. we're all good here.
Hi, Tony. Hi, Alex.
If you have any questions for anybody that's in the chat or anyone that's watching who's too shy to come in the chat, please put it in there, and I will incorporate it as we go along. But this is fascinating, Brie, that you have this solo record, and I can't help but here's my random mind. Do you foresee somewhere down the line where you'll have like a companion, like a book of some sort, or even like a comic book series or something that kind of goes along with it?
Ooh, a comic book series? What a great idea. Is that something people are doing?
There's some multimedia bands that are trying to cover different areas, but it's still a fairly new thing.
Oh, okay. I've thought about that. Like I was thinking, I started writing my memoirs, and I liked the beginning, and then I put it down for a minute, and I can't seem to get back to it. But I really like it, and I was thinking, what a cool thing it would be to sell the book, on Amazon or whatever, and have the CD or the music download, whatever, accompany it, because and I don't know how I would even introduce those songs in the book or whatever. I don't even know how that would work, but I love the concept of mixing media. Love it.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense to me in my head of like, especially since you're telling your story from all of these years in song, that could be another way to add the visual element, again, through either comic books or some sort of paintings or something else that kind of goes along with it. You have an art gallery thing.
I love that concept because I do paint. I do draw and paint. I'm a visual artist as well, and I do digital art, and of course, that cake art, which has nothing to do with anything. But so it would be wonderful to mix up the writing some kind of book with download of music, and artwork. It would be great to do all of the above. That's something to think about. And one thing about being my age at this point is that, I'm not looking for a career anymore, which as I say that, maybe that is or isn't true. I'm discovering that that maybe that's how it's supposed to be, but I'm always looking for opportunity to express myself. It's just that now I don't really have to make a living at it, but yeah, I mean, how fun is that, being able to put all the different mix all the different media? That would be so much fun. I would love that.
Yeah, again, it makes sense to my mind because if you have that kind of background, why not use all of it to promote your work?
Okay, how do I work in cake, Mark?
Well, let's say you have an art gallery exhibition of paintings you've done for each song on the album, and so at that gallery opening, that's where your cakes are also displayed. That people again
come on, have some cake and wine. By the way,
yeah, and you could
be a really special cake.
You can even add in something, and so I have a nonprofit background. You could even do something where it's like a silent or even a live auction of those cakes to help support a cause that you believe in.
Well, that's a great idea. That's one thing that I've thought about now being up here in Oregon is that, I closed down my cake business, but I still have all my stuff, or a lot of it. And I was thinking I would love to start something just to share my knowledge with young people or older people who don't have the money to take, expensive, culinary classes or lessons, I'll give it to you for free because, and I got some tricks. I created some tricks up my sleeve that nobody else knows how to do. And I would love to share that with people who, are at a disadvantage. I would just love that. We'll see if I can get that going, but there's so much to do, but I would love to give a lot of my information away. I really want to just give it away. I want to give it away to people. Basically, I guess I want to give it away to people who can't buy it.
That's awesome to hear. And I so in line with that type of feeling and that type of thinking, where it's like, I want to pass on what I have to other people, especially those that are less fortunate.
Absolutely. And I say young people, but also too, there's a lot of, I think, kind of, I don't know what to call it, but there's women especially who are older who, might not really know what to do with themselves, and and they've been like maybe baking all their lives. I'm really more of an artistic cake decorator. That's my expertise. I can show anybody how to do that. And I think it's a lot more of an attitude. You just do what you want to do and have some tools to know how to get it done and put your perception down in a tangible form. But yeah, I would love to see some people who are not quite sure what to do with their time. They have value. Older people have value. And if they could, take whatever information I can give and make it work for them on any level at all, whether it's just for family or for a business or fun with friends or social gathering, whatever, take it and have some fun and feel really freaking good about what you can do. I would just love to give that away.
Well, I mean, as you're talking about that, I'm thinking of, especially down in Portland, there's got to be some, if it's local community centers, senior centers.
Yes.
They sign up for your workshop for if it's fall, winter quarter, whatever it is.
Yes.
Or it could be if you're partnering with a local community college or a high school even, and doing the same thing, especially when they hear about your background overall, it's going to have this even more of an impact, I would say, honestly, about, hey, we're learning about artistic cake decorating. I didn't know she was a musician. I didn't know she was a painter. I didn't know she does all these other things.
Yes.
And you'd be bringing so much extra to the table.
I would love that so much, just to give back. I can remember the people that gave to me, that made me feel like maybe I wasn't crazy. Like maybe I did have extra talent. Maybe I was a good singer. Maybe I was a special drummer. I remember those people. And that's such an important gift that someone can give. And so, yeah, why not pass it on?
So anybody in the greater Portland area, reach out to Brie if you got some ideas.
Somehow, yes. Yeah, I have a website, briedarling.com, or you can do Brie Howard Darling. They'll both get there. And I do, we're just here about a year now, and I got to figure out how to, I'm still unpacking, but, I want to figure out a way to be able to do this. And it might just be this simply just, we have, fortunately, really, really lucky. We have a great space. I have a great house, and I have all my cake stuff right now in the basement. I've just been unpacking boxes and like setting up. Oh, look, and I was thinking about that. Look at all this cake stuff. And I forgot about that. And that's right. Oh, those look awesome. Oh yeah, I was going to use that for that. So many little points of inspiration. So, and maybe that's what I'll just do, is set up some tables down there and just start saying, okay, anybody want to learn how to do this? Bring some cake, bake some cake, bring it here, and I'll show you what you can do with it. Whatever you want. Yeah, that would be so fun. I would love that. And I still, I just did another cake show last year with one of the people that I met on Cake Wars. And so we did a cake show. I think it was I don't remember the name of the show. Super Delicious? I don't remember. But so it's not even, it's not so far off in the distance. It's all, new stuff and I don't want to lose that information myself, because sometimes when you don't do it for a while, you get a little bit rusty. So that's what I get out of it.
Okay, that's awesome. And Brie, I see a question came in for you.
Wonderful.
Says, who inspired you to become a musician?
Great question. It's not a one answer thing. When we were kids, I had an older brother, a younger brother, and then way later, almost 10 years later, a younger sister. But as my two brothers and I were growing up, my mom said, okay, it's time to pick an instrument. And my younger brother picked drums, my older brother picked guitar, and I picked a piano. And that's just because I didn't know what to pick. And so I guess my parents inspired that. They wanted us to have some experience on a musical instrument. Now, it didn't turn out that I ended up being a piano player, which in some ways I don't regret it, but learning learning a musical instrument as well as drums could be a really awesome thing. But inspired, I listened to a lot of music when I was in junior high school. And then one of the people that I think was a real influence on me was Janis Joplin. And I just thought she was awesome. And then at one point, June, who you met, and was going to Davis. Was she going to Davis? No, maybe she wasn't, but she had friends that went to Davis. She was going to Berkeley. But we went to a show at Freeborn Hall in Davis and went to see this band. And, we were young and inconsiderate, and we were like sitting on on the floor, like yakking with each other. And there was an opening act on. And this woman comes by and says, hey, and she basically was saying, shut the fuck up, because we were so noisy. And, and I appreciated that, because she pointed at the band that was on stage and saying, respect. And, half an hour later, she was on stage singing, and that was Janis Joplin. And she blew my mind. I've read this, and it's so true, that every note she sang was as if it was the last she would ever. She sang every word, every note, everything with as much passion and meaning as anything else. And I already knew who she was. I was already a fan. So that was super important to me. And that was a big influence in my life, just to fucking give it. Just give it all the time. Don't hold back. Doesn't matter where you are. You're at a rehearsal. Give it. 1000% give it. There's no reason to hold back. Now, that's worked against me as well as for me, because I've gotten thrashed my throat at a rehearsal. But I get it. And that's what I love about it, is like not holding back. There is no reserve, saving it for the next song or saving it for the next night. There's no reserve.
I love hearing these stories, and I'm sure we're probably going to hear more of them as this interview continues, especially with the Janis Joplin story of just having her walk by you and telling you basically that you're being disrespectful to the band, and then she gets up there.
And what I loved about it is I didn't go, yeah, fuck you. I got it. She was right. There were people up there pouring their hearts out, and we just weren't conscious. And she made us conscious really quick. I'm glad she didn't hit me.
But and see, so here's kind of a random thing. It's a tangent for me then. What's it like for you then, knowing and definitely having that respect for artists, being one yourself and being on stages all over the world, the climate we're in now with smartphones at shows, at concerts, people are, half the time they're not even watching the show. They're either doing this or they're doing this, or they're trying to post something, or they're doing whatever. Does that just drive you nuts, or you're like, well, it's just what it is? Or
I haven't noticed that, to be honest with you. I hope that when I perform in my most recent performances, that I'm capturing enough magic to share with people that their eyes are on stage. I don't know, what they do is their business. I try to think I know when they're with me or when they're not with me or with us, whatever the situation is. But I don't know what that's like. I haven't noticed it. I haven't looked.
Okay. Well, no, I suppose in a real way that's good because for me it's annoying to me as a fan when I'm looking around. And granted, I'm guilty of it too sometimes.
Yeah.
Oh, they're going to do this song, so I want to film it for that song, and I put the phone away.
I think I'm a little bit. I have I just found out this fairly recently, within the last maybe 3 or 4 years, that I have a pretty strong case of ADHD. So I don't know if I'm aware of that kind of stuff so much. I haven't noticed that, but I can imagine if you did see that as an artist out there and somebody was like in their phone, yeah, I guess that could be kind of disillusioning. It's like, hey, I'm here for you. But on the other hand, listen, if I'm not pulling you up there with me, that's my job. I got to work a little bit harder, get you up there, get you off that phone, get you up here with me, That's my job.
I love that attitude because I see both sides of it, like you're talking about. As a performer, it's like you're trying to get the audience, you're trying to get them with you and take them on this ride.
Yeah.
And if most of them are like not paying attention to you, then I guess I'm not doing what I thought I was doing.
No, but isn't that cool? That's my job. My job is to get you on that bus. Come on. You want to go for a ride? Come on. Come with me. This is much more fun than what you're doing right now. So that's my job. And what a great job.
Absolutely. And this kind of brings up another thing that's at least going on currently with certain types of music, like say pop, definitely rock bands, and even some hard rock bands and metal bands, where they are using a lot of backing tracks when they perform live.
Right,
so
right.
They've got their laptop over here, or someone's keeping things going. They got the click track as a drummer, going in through their ears, and they don't know how to perform without it. I mean, like they have to have it, versus it being something that accentuates. Like if you recorded a symphony on your record, well, yeah, you're not necessarily going to have that every time you play a show, so you need to have that in the background. But we're talking about replacing bass parts, guitar parts, vocals at times.
It's a whole different world, isn't it? It's different from what I came up with and different from what I know, and yet I see the value in it. I know for me and the girls in Fanny, we can't necessarily pull off all the things that were done on record, so we might need, when we performed live recently, Nikki Barclay was a huge part of Fanny, keyboard player, and she's not there. She's chosen not to join us on this adventure. So, there is an option. You can have a keyboard player on the side behind the curtain. You can have the tracks, pre-recorded. So the attraction is there, and I get it. My favorite thing has always been to pull it off live, but who knows if that's as times change. I think it's okay to bend with the times and take advantage of what's going on in technology. And at the same time, well, I guess hopefully you don't ever trade that off for the artistic experience,
Exactly. I was just at a show back in October where, and again, as a musician, I get it if there's things you need to do to enhance what you're doing. But if it's somehow replacing, this band, literally, their laptop stopped, and so they had to stop their song.
Yes, right.
They had to let it boot up again, and they're apologizing to the crowd and all that kind of thing. And I'm kind of like, they seem talented enough to me that just play without it. There's 5 of you up there. I think you can kind of, I don't know exactly whether the parts were getting filled in from that laptop, but they were like, you could tell the look on their face was like they were mortified.
Yes, sure. I've been at that show too, where the laptop didn't work, or something broke down, or it wasn't working, and what the heck do you do? Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, no. It was kind of like,
I think partly too, some of those things are part of the art nowadays, which I totally respect. I respect that, like being able to work with with a computer or a machine or something like that. That's an art in itself. I think I like the idea of staying open to things changing and new ways coming around and not being so adamant about sticking with the old that you don't, stop using a typewriter and start using your computer. Those tools are there for you to use or not. You don't have to use them, but there's a lot of stuff that gets by me these days. Sorry, my dog is barking. Beanie, come here. There's a lot of stuff that gets by me. Like, I don't know if I'm as able to, come here, baby, come here, to embrace some of the new technology the way young people are able to. It's just part of their world. And for me, I have to learn to incorporate it into my world. And it's not as easy because I'm used to doing the way. Let me give you an example. When I was on tour with Cherie Curry, we decided to use in-ears. And I was freaked out because I'm from old school where, listen, when I first started playing, with the girls in Fanny, we didn't even have monitors. You just had whatever was shooting out there and you just heard what was going on stage. Okay. And now we were talking about using in-ears so that you could hear really well. And I was a little bit concerned about it, but man, I realized that years of not being able to hear what I was singing and how I was singing would make me hoarse, but being able to hear all the time, I never got hoarse once on that tour. So, that was just me learning how to use what could be a scary new technology, because I was used to hearing what goes on here, live, right now. And it was all live. But yeah, new technology, I don't know, bring it on. At least it's my choice whether to use it or not, isn't it?
That's rich. That's such a healthy attitude that even for myself, I think I need to adopt more of it. What we're doing right now, and we have some fans in here that joined me back in 2020, the first time I did a virtual interview there's a band from LA called Alice, wonderful band. And they invited me to do these 30-minute interviews with guests of my choosing in this format. And I was freaked out about it because I'm not a tech person.
Right.
So I'm like,
how cool is this? Look at what you're doing. You're so tech worthy. You scare me.
Well, thank you. It's just, if you go back and look at those early live streams, I'm kind of like, I didn't know where to look. I didn't know how to do things. I didn't know where the chat was, what these buttons do over here. But I'm so glad that I stuck with it because this is an integral part of what I do now.
Absolutely. And you're an artist at this. You do something that not everybody can do. I cannot even imagine doing what you do. So that's just so awesome. And for other artists like me, we're so grateful because you're giving us a platform to share, which is, maybe that's the whole thing, isn't it? Sharing.
It really is, Brie, and I'm so grateful for the opportunities that I've had to connect with folks, and especially through this medium, because literally somebody could be halfway around the world, and as long as we work out the time zones, we can talk.
Yeah. So because of what you do, because of what I do, and because of what so many other artists, both working with some of the new technology and old technology, we can all share. So it's an awesome thing, and I love it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And we're talking about kind of like how I came to know Fanny. So I'm one of those people. I'm like, how did I not known who this band was? I saw the documentary, and I'm like, I just started doing a deep dive and I want to talk to the director. I want to talk to the band members if they're available. I want to talk to anybody involved.
Have you gotten in touch with anybody else besides June? I know you've talked with June.
And I interviewed the director from the film. That was actually the first person that I talked to.
Bobby Joe Hart?
Yep.
Oh, okay, wonderful. She's awesome. Hardworking woman, man. Woo!
Yeah, I loved her perspective on everything, and that's why I'm like, I gotta try. Is there anybody in the band that wants to talk to me? thing. And so, yeah, when I got to talk to Gina, and obviously I'm talking with you now, it's as a fan, but also as a media person, both sides of it. I love these kind of things where I get a chance to talk to the artist because I get inspired by it. I obviously learn about more things that I would ever know from just somebody else's point of view. I want to hear from the artists themselves.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful too. That's an awesome thing that you provide that opportunity, because sometimes people say, I want to know the story of Fanny. Well, if you get it from one person, you aren't going to get the story, because it's 4, 5, 6 different people, and we're all different, and as we should be, I think. One thing, Bobby Joe, having put together the story. The story is a very edited example of what Fanny was. It has to be, because you can only tell so much in that amount of time. But for being able to kind of get the story straight and put it out there, I thought she did an amazing job. It's not the story that I thought was going to be when she first talked about doing the documentary, not even close to what I thought it was going to be, but it's the right story. It's the right story. And I thought she did an incredible job, because, the confusion of having 2 drummers, because I started before Alice and Alice joined in, and then I came back after Alice quit, and blah, 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 blah. It's confusing, especially from my end, like people ask me a question about it, and I still kind of have to fumble for the right way of explaining, well, I was in the band before it was called Fanny, but it was the same people, but blah, 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 blah. I mean, it's tough, so Bobby Joe did a great job of being able to do that.
Well, that's great to hear, because again, for someone like myself who was new, and I was reviewing the film that's how I came to find out about it. There's such a history there, and there's so much, like you just said, there's so much material there for a director to have to kind of sift through to figure out what is the narrative, where do I go with this.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how she did it. I mean, I'm trying to figure out, how to write my memoir, my book. And it's like I could go in so many different directions, and I can't give you my whole life in one book. It's just too much. So I got to figure that one out. I feel like I have a good start, but that's tough. So she did an amazing job of making a concise perspective for everybody to share. That's fairly accurate.
Yeah, and for anybody that's watching right now, if you're still in the chat, if you have a question for Brie, again, please put it in there, and I will incorporate it.
Questions. Big questions. Come up with a strange, unusual, different question. I was talking with a young man. I think he was 19. He was a family member of my cousin's through marriage. And he had the most interesting questions, because he wasn't planning on having questions. He was just asking, and I just loved it because they were so different. They were not typical. Very cool.
Well, there you go, folks. Ask anything. And I do see Alex has mentioned that The Who, I guess, put out a companion comic book with their 50th anniversary album. So,
wow.
So there we go. When we go back to that, what we were talking about earlier.
Wowie, wow, wow. I love that. See, now the first thing I think of is, because I have done illustration, and I want to do it myself. That makes the job even harder. I have a hard time sometimes of delegating work. I like to do it all myself.
Well, see, we have that in common, because like I'm the reviewer, I'm the interviewer, I'm the photographer, I'm kind of all of it. It's like, and I love it.
And sometimes you get so used to working with yourself, and you can count on you, and if you mess it up, you can't be pissed off at anybody but yourself, which is always a good thing, not being bugged at somebody else. But boy, I got to tell you, I make it so hard on myself by having to be all 10 guys.
I know that feeling. I'm kind of curious too about when you're talking about with your brothers and eventually your sister, picking up instruments. And like you said, you picked piano. in my case, it was more of I was in elementary school, and they said, "Okay, you bring the sheet home to your parents." And my mom was like, "Well, your older brother's playing trumpet, so what are you going to pick?" And I picked saxophone.
I did too. That was my first instrument in junior high school. I played saxophone.
Awesome.
And that's so funny. And my brother, my older brother, played trombone. Don't know what my younger brother, but then when we got older, for some reason we had to pick another instrument. Well, I don't know why it was that. And yeah, so you did sax. How were you?
I was good through elementary and junior high.
Uh-huh.
But then when we got to high school, to me, that's when things separated. I mean, that either you were really interested in music as possibly a career or something like that. And I was in it for like the social aspect for fun. So
I don't know why I was into it. I think that I wanted to play sax in junior high school because there was a popular show called My Three Sons.
Uh-huh.
And there was, do you remember the sax music? Da, 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 da. And I wanted to learn how to play that. And I was okay at it. It wasn't great. But then it was after that when my mom suggested we pick another instrument. So what happened was she found an old piano for $100 on they didn't have the recycler yet or Craigslist or anything like that, but somewhere she found one, and they brought it to the house, and it wasn't tunable because the bridge was broken. And so we couldn't play it. I couldn't play it. And we didn't have a lot of money. We did not have a lot of money at all. So we couldn't afford to have it fixed, and we couldn't afford to get another one. So that just kind of sat in the hall in our family home for years. We played bad chopsticks on it. But meanwhile, my brother went on to play drums, and my older brother went on to play guitar. And I knew that a band was coming over to audition. My older brother was going to play my younger brother's drums, and he was going to audition for the cool small town band. And I was on the drums when the band got there with their momager, and she said, "I want you to play in this band." And I said, "Okay." And I didn't even know how to play drums, but I was all down for it. This is one thing I've learned about my ADHD. I just say, "Yeah, cool," and then figure out how to do it, which is a blessing in a way, because, it's like, sure, let's do that. And then, figure it out later. And sometimes you find yourself a little bit stressed because you don't know what you're doing, but it worked out. I fell in love with playing, and I was in my first band and joined the musicians union at 14. I was 14 years old, and we played and we worked and we made money. We played at teen centers, on military bases, at fairs and whatever. And, there was an official momager in the band, the young guitarist. He was 12 years old, and his mom was the manager. And I'm still in touch he's passed away now, but I'm still in touch with his family and his younger brothers and sister. So that's really very cool for me because of social media and because of the internet. I was able to reconnect with those people and reconnect with that same band. We just had a reunion a couple of months ago in July, was it? End of July. We got together with the first band I was with when I was 14.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, that kind of stuff to me means so much, to know, maybe we're not as close as we were back in those days. Well, with Fanny, Jean was my best friend. When we were first in Fanny, I was 16, Jean was 16, and June was 17. And so Jean was she was my best friend. She was my bandmate. She was my trouble partner. We'd get in trouble together. And that we know each other and care about each other as much as we do today that's a big deal. This is like, what is it? How many years later is it? Okay, I'm 75. I was 14 or 16. So it's 60 something years. Is that right? Am I wrong? How scary is that?
No, that sounds right. It'd be 60 something years.
60 something years I've known her and have confided in her and shared with her and depended on her and sang with her. And oh, that's just awesome.
That is, and I think it's a healthy reminder for everybody about the relationships you have with people. And yeah, sometimes things kind of like the first band that you're in, it's so great that technology brought you back together. And I'm no different. That I have a friend that we were in a band together in high school, but I knew him back in 6th grade, and he lives in Houston now. But every now and then he flies up here to see a certain band show. So we'll be there, and we kind of like, it's like a blast from the past, like we're like 16 all over again and watching a band.
There you go. Shorter the track, faster the train. Doesn't it feel like really some form of yesterday? Really not that far away when you were, I still see Jean. I still see my brothers and I see them. I see all the faces that I remember. I remember the 14-year-old faces. I remember the 20-year-old faces, and I see that all in the face that I'm looking at today. I don't see just the face that I'm looking at. I see all the reminders of the past. And what a life is awesome. Hey, listen, I guess it's a little bit scary too, because at some point it has to end. But how awesome, what a wonderful thing that you can know these people and have experiences and be grateful that you had them. And, I have to say, I don't know what it would have been like otherwise, but music is a great connector. All my brothers, both my brothers and my sister are musicians. My husband is a musician. People in our family are musicians and artists as well. And there's something there, there's a connection. There's an extra story that you get to share.
I love that. There's an extra story you get to share. I have to remember that. Because it could be someone that I'm just meeting at a show. I don't even know who they are, but if we start talking about the band that's going to be on stage, it's like, oh yeah, I play bass, or I do this, or I'm like, oh, and do you know so and so? Have you been to that club back in 1982 or whatever? And you just start forming this kind of bond and synergy with people, and it comes from the basis of music.
Right, that's right. Music gives us, whoa. I mean, I know intellectually, I may not have experienced it, but I think music brings all sorts of things to people's lives, enriches their lives in a lot of ways. And, the ways that I'm familiar with is what you're talking about now, because I share that. It's common ground for having a real heartfelt relationship with somebody, which is very cool.
Yeah, and I would also think you probably also have those types of relationships if we're talking about things that you believe in. So if it's women in music, if it's from your racial background or whatever other kind of things, things that you believe in, causes that you fight for. Those are also things that start bringing people together because you're like-minded. You're thinking about the same things.
Right.
And I can tell you honestly that during the pandemic, the hardest thing for me when I was doing these interviews on the Alice tour was when I had people that had conflicting viewpoints politically. And we really tried not to talk about politics, but I wanted to be respectful of them. And it was so hard sometimes to see the other side of what somebody's saying when I'm on the polar opposite end of it. But then we started working on ways to start getting a little closer together and kind of realized we weren't that far apart.
It's so interesting. I have worked, I guess I shouldn't be specific who it was, but I've worked with somebody who is politically very opposite from how I am. And it was during those times, 2019, 2020. And it was so weird for me on some levels. Like I couldn't understand, why would you respect that or like that? And then in some other ways, this person is such a fantastic, wonderful human being that I could not judge them on what their, and I won't even say chosen, how they perceived what was right and wrong about politics and how things were being done. I couldn't judge them on that because they were good people. They were good people. My My best, I'm going to say this, it's going to get me in trouble, but who freaking cares? My best friend was a Trumper, and I couldn't relate. But I know that I love her. She's my best friend. So all that crap just flies out the window. Our disagreements on what is right politically, it's such bullshit. And it's so, maybe unimportant. Maybe it's important. I don't even know, but it should definitely not enter into the realm of respect of another human being on this planet to live with their choices that they decide to live with.
Well said. I can so relate to that because of somebody who, when I have fans that will DM me and say, why did you interview this particular person? Because of blah, 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 blah. And I can say that I treat that person like a brother because they've been nothing but respectful to me. They've been nothing but good to me. Yes, we differ politically, but I still, if they called me and said, Mark, would you mind, helping us out with this? I'd absolutely do it.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is more your issue, not my issue.
Yes, abso-freaking-lutely. And listen, we're all just equal people on this, globe, trying to figure out what is honest, what to believe, how to feel. And sometimes we'll go one way and sometimes we'll go another. And these people are more important to me as human beings than their current political belief. That's just not, at least that's how I feel right now. Ask me a year from now or ask me 2 years ago, I might be different. But right now, today is like, I say, respect the human being for whatever side they fall on. Doesn't have to be my side. They don't have to agree with me. Hell, hardly anybody does. I don't know if that's true. I just said that.
Yeah, no, I think it's so hard because people just want to kind of dig their heels in. They want people to be on their side. It's like, you know what? That's not how the world works. And it doesn't make this person any less of a person because they differ from you. Right. Now, if they're doing something that maybe hurts you or maybe hurts themselves or hurts other people, maybe that's a little different story. But it's like, no, this is...
You want to hurt yourself, I am not going to fight you. I don't want you to hurt me, but, hurting some other people, that's a hard one to take. Like if you're a racist or if you say unkind things to somebody. Well, for me, those are personal experiences, being an Asian in this country. That's a tough one because I know how bad that can feel. I was never shot for it, but I was like peppered with little bullets all my life, and that's painful. And it's, nobody wants to feel that. And the thought of somebody doing that to somebody else, that's a tough one, the racial wrongs, what I call the racial wrongs.
Yeah, no, we could probably spend the next 12 hours talking about, that topic.
Sure.
Yeah. And,
sure, and I sense that whenever I talk with somebody who has that I can tell has somewhat of maybe a similar experience because it's different. It's different than the norm. It's different than, and I can't explain it to somebody who has no idea what it feels like to look different in the room. I can't explain that. They probably won't understand. And that's okay too. That's not their path.
Right. I know for myself, being a person of color, that I've talked about this on my other live streams, that there's a certain look that you get sometimes that you can't describe that to someone who doesn't look like me.
Mm-hmm.
It's something, and also a feeling you get if you're being, it's almost like you're invisible, like you don't exist somehow.
Yeah.
That's the best way I could describe it to somebody else who's just like, I don't know what you're talking about, Mark. And I was like, well, I don't expect you to know what I'm talking about.
You don't get to know, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's a real, for me, it's been a real interesting learning experience going through my life and getting to be more recognized and more accepted. I mean, like for Filipinos right now, and this was our food is the bomb. Everybody loves Filipino food now, you know? Well, there was a time when I was embarrassed because my mom was making these foreign foods and like I didn't want anybody to come over our house and smell it, you know? Big change, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking about. I had a friend that at lunchtime at school, instead of pulling out the sandwich, you pull out something that's ethnic, and they're kids are like, "What the hell is that?" And a lot of them, they're not very nice about it either.
I know, and not that sometimes kids meant to be hurtful, but they can be. You know what was funny? Okay, my mom tried to be white. My dad is German, Scottish, Irish. He's like a fourth generation Californian, and my mom was born in the Philippines, and they met during the war. So my mom came over here, and she tried to be as white as she could be, so that we would feel in place. What she forgot, what she didn't notice is we weren't the same color as everybody else. Then we were the only ones in town. So, okay, but she would make us bologna sandwiches, but not maybe being from this country. She wasn't, here's how she made bologna sandwiches. She would take one piece of white bread, slap a piece of bologna on it, put another piece of white bread on it, and smash it thin as a cracker. And I would be so embarrassed because nobody else's sandwich was smashed thin as a cracker. And then one time I bit into it, and instead of the piece of bologna, she put in the cardboard picture of bologna that was in the package. So as I bit my little slinky sandwich, the cardboard came back. You know, it's really a comedy. And I love her today. She's passed away now, but I love her today for who she was and how hard she tried. To me, it seemed like I wish she would have taken a different approach, but maybe not. Maybe it's okay that she took the one that she did, you know? Hey, I'm alive and I feel pretty okay and pretty happy. Yeah, I'm stuck with a lot of probably painful past experiences that make me who I am, that give me anxiety, but you know, they did the best they could. You know, but one thing that both my mom and dad did, and I'm so grateful for, is they really directed us to be to read and to play an instrument. And I'm ever so grateful for that, for those two things. Those two things changed my life and made my life what it is today, that I'm so grateful for, that I get the opportunity to express myself, and I get the opportunity, and I've had the opportunity to travel all over the world, play with so many different levels of musicality and different styles and different people. It's the bomb. So they gave me that. So good on them.
Yeah, no, that's, I'm thinking with your background, so you could educate me. Was it common was there a large Filipino community in California where you were at, or how did you end up with, like, obviously with June and Jean also being of that background? I'm just kind of curious, what was that like back in those days?
Okay, I lived in the town of, it was Folsom, California, which is pretty huge these days. But at the time when I left there in 1967, I think, it was 5,000 people. And we were the only minority family in town, except for when I was in high school, an Indian family from India moved in. And I was so glad because I wasn't the darkest person in town anymore, which is maybe not the best way to think, but I was just glad that I wasn't alone. I'm glad I wasn't the conspicuous one. I think there was a Filipino community in the Sacramento area. I wasn't so much aware of it because my mom kind of kept that pushed back and pushed down, trying to fit in. She wanted to fit in. She wanted us to fit in. She didn't want us to feel different, you know, which was crazy because we look different. I mean, I'm kind of fair, but I have, you know, Filipino features. I didn't look like my dad. There's parts of me that kind of look like my dad, kind of parts of me that look like my mom, but we were definitely different than any other kid in town. But I think she embraced more the Filipino community after I had left. Well, because I left when I was 17. I graduated from high school, got married to one of the guys in my very first band, the guitar player, which is a whole nother story, falling in love with guys in the band. But and then I moved to the Bay Area. I was in San Jose. And then I think my mom started getting into the Filipino culture in Sacramento, because my sister, all of a sudden, she started making Filipino food and sharing that. So I kind of missed out on that. And I get it. I totally get it. She thought the best way to help us was to pretend that we were something else, I wish I would have learned. My mom spoke Spanish. She spoke Tagalog. She spoke a little bit of Japanese, and I didn't get any of that from her. I got a good Spanish accent, but that's it.
See, that sounds like, so like I'm Japanese and I don't speak the language. Go back to my parents. They don't speak the language either. I have to go back to my grandparents.
How old are your parents?
Let's see. They're the mid 70s.
Okay.
Yeah. So
you're as old as me, so you could be my son.
Yeah.
How old did you say you were?
53.
Yeah, my daughter just turned 54.
Well, there you go.
There you go. So they're my age. All right.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't speak the language either. Were they born here or did they come over early?
My parents were born here. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And if I go back, if I remember right, my grandfather on my mom's side was also actually born here, but then he was educated in Japan and then he came back to the States. And so for me, I grew up in Kirkland, which is a suburb here of Seattle. So
Okay.
so my racial identity was completely confused because I didn't see people that looked like me other than one other family. And I kind of in the same way that you were, that I was raised just like anyone else that was in the neighborhood. So it wasn't until people pointed out that I was different, how I looked or whatever, my skin tone, all that, that it became like, oh, I thought I was like you. And it's like, no, you're not like me. And like, well, what am I then?
Yeah. So, yeah, isn't that interesting? That's how I felt. And the kids in school, like in high school, I remember one of my girlfriends, I don't think she meant it unkind at all, but she said, you'd be really pretty if your nose wasn't so wide. And so I guess what she was saying that I wasn't because my nose was so wide. Well, first of all, I didn't know that my nose was wide. And I just didn't know where to put that or how to take that, And I know that she wasn't doing it to be hurtful, but it was confusing.
I know exactly what you're talking about because I had a classmate in elementary school asked me about, is it hard for me to see because my eyes are smaller?
Yes.
And I'm kind of like, what do you mean? I can see you. I can't see, but I didn't know what she was talking about.
Right. Yeah. And then when I was real young, I grew up my younger years in Alaska on an army base because my dad was in the army. And when we came back to California, some of the kids were saying, did you live in an igloo? And I didn't want to be different. I wanted to be like them. And when I saw that same person, I had forgotten who said that to me, but when I saw them in some kind of, we got together because one of our girlfriends passed away and I just happened to get the message and I showed up for it up there. And the woman who said it told me that she said it. And she said, it was just, you were so exotic. I just wanted to know, but that's not what I felt at the time. I felt like she was saying, I was different and awful. That's how it sounded to me then. But, it's so tough, I think, being a teenager anyway. We misconstrue everything. And then if you've got that additional thing that like you actually are racially different than anybody else, or you look different or a different color, boy, it can get tough. But here we are.
Absolutely. I can definitely remember back in the day when I didn't have a whole lot of role models in entertainment. Because the people that I saw were the biggest cliches in the world to me, if it's on TV at the time, before cable ever existed, or if I went to the movies, you see someone like Bruce Lee, because you're either a martial artist or you're some sort of subservient person. I didn't see somebody that was a strong male Asian. I didn't see an athlete. I didn't see these things in this, at least for me, in the 70s and the early 80s. And so when I try to explain that to my Caucasian friends, you had that all your life. You had that all your life. So like when I see somebody who's like, let's say like Dwayne Johnson or somebody like that, The Rock, who's one of the biggest people in the world, doesn't matter if you like him or not, the fact that he's done what he's done, I respect the hell out of that, because I see a person of color up here.
Yeah, and you know, when I was in LA in, I think it was maybe the early 70s, one of the girls that was also in the band, Fanny, Addie Lee, the guitar player, she told me that she was taking some acting classes, and she was doing it because she wanted to feel more confident on stage as a musician. And she said, it's really fun, Brie, you should check it out. So I did check it out. And, you know, so I started, you know, getting hip to this, the world of acting. And at that moment, at that time, there were no Blacks on TV. There were no Asians. Nobody even knew what a Filipino was. And when I did get called for auditions, you know, it was like for either a light-skinned Black or an American Indian or something like that. And when I'd get there, it's like, you know, I didn't look like any of that, you know, not just sitting next to an actual, you know. So there was no work for me. I did actually manage to get to do a couple of movies. I was really just fortunate. But there was no place for me. And I just used to want to hide the fact that I was different. I didn't want anybody to see different. So, which is crazy because I was working with June and Jean, and we all looked the same, or at least similar. But you know, I got to tell you, we never thought about it. We never talked about it. It was not a thing. We weren't. You know, my mom was the one that I think she first showed me a picture of the two of them in a Sacramento paper or a Folsom paper, newspaper, and saying, "Oh, look at these Filipino girls." And I was like, "Yeah, I don't care." But then it turned out that their drummer got pregnant. They were looking for a drummer, and my band just broke up because all the guys in my very first band, they got drafted. So then there was June and Jean, and I went to audition, and you know, the rest is history. We played together, and it was really uncanny that a guitar player, a bass player, and a drummer, all of the same, almost exact same heritage because their father is white, lived in the same area and got together. That is just bizarre. It's actually, and we appreciate that now, but we didn't think of it at the time. You know, just like, come on, let's go play some music. Let's learn some tunes, you know?
Yeah, I think that's kind of why I think I brought up about what was the Filipino population like back then, because yeah, the fact that you guys got together in Fanny, I thought that's got to be like a rarity. I mean, it had to.
So it's even today I think about that, and it's so it's such an odd thing that we happen to be the same age, the same, you know, heritage makeup, and played the 3 different instruments that you need to have a little band. I mean, it's kind of kooky. It's just bizarre that happened, and lucky me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And as we kind of get closer to winding this up, I see Tony had a question. Sorry, Tony, I know you put this in a while ago, so we got off on our tangents. He asked Brie, 3 things you would want to be remembered for.
I would love to be remembered for being, the biggest word I guess is kind, but when I think of that, it includes just like being caring and being giving and sharing. It's one of the most important things to me. Is I was just talking about this with somebody else. One thing I love about being on stage is I feel really good about and confident about what I do. I know what I do is super dynamic and really strong and really good. And I love to share that spotlight with other people in the band. And I can turn that over. I love that. That's so important to me, is like, shine some light on somebody else, give them some light. So that's one thing. I would like to think that I was, that I at one point can feel like I'm at least 92% honest. So honest. It's tough. It's tough because there's so much stuff that gets in the way. And also too, like, we were talking about that song, Shorter the Track, the Faster the Train. The first set of lyrics I finally landed on and recorded was, I wanted to feel like it's not a big deal. It's okay. I can live with that. That's cool. I'm cool with that. I'm not afraid. That's not true. That's not true. So I need to rewrite that because I want to be more honest about it. I don't know if I'm scared to death about it, but it can't be all easy and like no big deal. There must be a reason why I don't sleep the whole night through. So that's another thing. Kind. I would like to be known as willing to share, and also I would like to be honest.
Okay. Well, thank you, Tony, for the question.
Tony, thanks.
Brie, sometimes what I do with guests is that I'll do some desert island kind of questions. So if you're stuck on a desert island and you get to, bring something, do something. And you mentioned earlier that you kind of want some, maybe some unorthodox questions. So I'm kind of curious to see what your answers would be for some of these things. So first one, and I'm doing this off the top of my head this time instead of like having stuff written down. If you could only bring one song with you to a desert island, of any song in the world, past or present, what song would you bring?
Wow. A song called Everyone's in Love with Me. And I'll leave that to you to look it up, if you can find it somewhere, to see who sang it, who wrote it, and what it's about.
Okay, I just wrote it down, so I'll see what I can dig up. Okay. If you could bring one person with you to a desert island that's going to spend the time with you there, who would you bring? Past or present, future?
My daughter.
And I saw, kind of as an aside, at some point you were the mother-in-law of Nikki Sixx. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was just thinking about him a lot today. Yeah.
It's for me, again, going from this movie and then doing some history and looking through, doing some research and seeing how things are all connected. I'm like, oh, that's fascinating to me when I saw who your daughter was, and then who she was with, and then your granddaughter, and all these other things. I'm like, oh wow.
Yeah.
I saw them in 1984, open for Ozzy Osbourne up here in Seattle.
Nikki and I at one point were so close, and it was such a wonderful friendship. And like, I'd be on the road and he was on the road, and we would call each other and commiserate. And I just felt like I had something in common with him that even my daughter couldn't understand, because she was not a musician. And I just liked him so much. And I say liked because when they split up, we kind of are not as close anymore, which is really, I really regret, because he's an awesome person. And I was just thinking about how, God, wouldn't it be wonderful to see him again and to tell him, listen, I kind of took sides. I'm sorry. Because there were no sides. You didn't have to take sides. I just felt like I should. But I had a good time with him. I really love him as a human being. He's a good person.
That's awesome to hear. That's awesome to And I think one other question I could throw onto that desert island would be, what would be your one and only food that you would have with you there that you'd be eating pretty much every day?
Whoa, every day. Listen, there's nothing that could sustain you. I don't think, no matter what. So I would just take some mushrooms with me. And as far as another being, I'd take my dog. I'd take my dog and my mushrooms. Because if you're stuck on a desert island, it ain't going to be that long. No matter what food you're going to take, it's going to kill you not having other food. This is my dog, Beanie. This is my best friend. This is my best friend. Beanie. He doesn't see cameras or TVs or he can't see that stuff.
Hi, Beanie. How old is Beanie?
Beanie's 4.
Okay.
I got him right before the pandemic. And he's my best friend. I broke my ankle last year when I was putting some furniture together right after we moved on January 1st. And he stayed in bed with me for 3 months and didn't leave my side.
Wow.
He's my best friend. He didn't get bored with me. Didn't need anything from me. Bean.
See, that's what's awesome about, I would say, dogs in particular, is that they're not judging you. They just want to be loved. They want to be cared for, and they want to do that for you.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? Wouldn't it be so wonderful if we were all like that with each other?
It'd be a much, much better world. Absolutely.
That's my goal as a human being, is just to, no matter what, past all my insecurities, past all my resistance, whatever, is just to love somebody in spite of what they do, because I think that would be, I would feel better. They would feel better, and it's so true what you said about dogs. If I could be a dog, if I could just be like that, just give. That's all they do. I love that. Give and protect. Like when he's going crazy barking at somebody, he's just trying to protect me. That's awesome.
Yeah, and there's definitely certain dogs and certain breeds that, because our family friends way back when, they had, I forget the name of the breed, but that dog, I remember I woke up once, this was when I was probably like 12, and she was literally going around to every room, just slowly walking around to make sure everything was okay, and then she plopped herself down in the hallway, so that basically you'd have to get past her to get to any of the rooms where the people were.
That's what she does. What he does, he sleeps on the foot of the bed facing out. And after the sun starts coming up in the morning, he'll come and get in the bed with me. But he's like there to make sure nothing ever comes to, I want to be that with my family, with my friends, with, other musicians, with other human beings. I want to be that. That's what I want to be. I want to be a loyal human being.
So that we could probably add that to the things to be remembered for.
Yeah, you know what? That's probably more than the other things. That's what I would like to be. Not that I'd like to be remembered for it, but what I would like to be is just a loyal, loving human being, furthering happiness on this planet more than anything else.
Hear, hear. I mean, it's something that I don't know, again, how many times during live streams I've talked about of let's try to be positive with people, try to do things the right way. And if everyone kind of adopts that attitude and that intention, then we start making progress, in my mind. But instead of you doing what you want to do, or maybe, especially in this day and age with social media and everything else, about immediately judging somebody and immediately saying something negative and immediately putting a thumbs down on whatever. And so, like, do you really need to do that?
Yeah, and it's interesting because you say that it is so much noticeable now because of social media and everything. But I think that's how it's been, in life. Some people who might not be as secure might need to put you down so they feel a little bit better. In a band, somebody might say, "Oh, that's not that good," because they're insecure. But what they don't realize is they're instead, if we could be more encouraging, if like if somebody could say to me, wow, that's very cool, then I could say, great, thanks, you're cool too. Then we would proceed upward and outward instead of crushing and down and hiding and feeling resentful and feeling insecure. Yeah, wouldn't that be the bomb?
Absolutely. I'm thinking back to high school with our guitar player was an only child, and the other three of us all had siblings, so we couldn't relate to that because sometimes he'd have tantrums. I mean, literally, he'd have a tantrum in rehearsal, and we're kind of like, we didn't know. It was like, what's wrong with him? What's setting him off? We didn't even know what was going on. And instead of trying to lift him up, we'd just be kind of there like, what's wrong with you? We didn't even try to help him.
Because we're afraid and we're concerned. I think if people thought more about how can I help or how can I encourage instead of how can I judge or how can I put this as a place where I can deal with it, I think it would be better. I want to be that guy. I want to encourage. I want to encourage. I just thought about that the other day, that what a great thing it would be to encourage people to just to encourage. And that way it would be better for me because then I wouldn't be caught in the things that bring me down as a human being, like, 'cause I get envious and I get hurt and I get resentful, all those things. If somebody says something unkind to me, the first thing I want to do is like stick a screwdriver in their eye, but there's other ways to deal with it, to say, wow, that really hurt me. And, I don't think you meant to do that because you're such a cool person. So, let's talk about it. Something, whatever, however that right way to do it is. Here I am at 74. I'm still trying to figure it out.
Well, I think the key in what you're saying is that it really does come back to communication. So if it's communicating how you feel, what you just said, how that made me feel, but also things within, friendships, family, bandmates, and anyone you encounter, someone at the grocery store, someone that tries to take your parking spot, or any of those kind of things.
Yeah.
If you just took I used to be a teacher at one point, and I worked with a lot of inner city gang involved youth.
What did you teach?
For those guys, it was a one-stop shop. So I was doing math and English and social studies, science, a lot of life skills. We did PE with those guys, and I'm not the most athletic person, but it was a lot of it with those guys was getting them to a point of trying to pause, because they would instantly react to something. I'm being disrespected. Boom, then I'm going to do this.
Right.
Can you take 5 seconds and think quickly before you react to it? Because that's what got you in my program. That's what landed you here. And the goal is to have you get back to your sending school, whatever school you came from, and that you are successful there, so that you can pause and think before you react. Otherwise, you're going to come back to me, and that means we failed somewhere. And it was constantly working with these guys about these things. And it was interesting to watch some of them act literally like they would just kind of try to catch themselves and then think, oh, I should do this, or I should not say that. And it's like, we're getting somewhere. This is why we keep harping on you about these kind of things, and it was all of them, everyone that got sent to me there. Imagine that you have 12 students that have been kicked out of their respective schools, and they're all in the same room together.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost like a movie. I mean, it was not easy.
Yeah. Whoa. But I think that maybe life in general is kind of like that. There's so many people they're afraid to give because they're afraid they'll be shortchanged instead of, always trying to take, give a little, give a lot.
Yeah, no, I can tell you, and I'm guilty of this too, that when I started doing the media work, you have other people eventually start coming around, even doing these interviews, they start coming around. Mark, I like your style. I want to know how you started. Can you give me some advice? I'm happy to give advice about things of what I did, what I encountered. But then there's also sometimes you have people that they're maybe asking for different reasons that aren't really genuine. And that's the hard thing to decipher. So I'm still going to give you advice. Whether you take it or not, I don't know. I can't control that.
Right.
But if you're successful, all the better. I'm so happy with what I do that I'm not concerned about what you're doing over here and over here.
Yeah.
But there's so many people that I think that they're doing this all the time. Like, well, wait a minute, you shouldn't be doing that. That's what I'm doing. It's like, who cares?
Yeah. Yeah. So true. So true. I get it completely. I think, we just want to be good human beings, right?
We do at the end of the day, because everyone's trying to do the same thing. You're trying to live your life. You're trying to be happy. If you have a job, if you have a family, if you, that person that just sit on the sidewalk going from A to B, they're trying to get to the store. They're trying to get to go exercise or whatever they're doing. And for the most part, that's everybody that you see out there, anyone that you encounter. And the folks that are on a different path, something led them there. Things happened in their life. They weren't born that way, where they're now homeless or they're having mental health issues or they're having whatever other issues.
Nobody planned that.
Yeah, there's definitely things in their life. There's a guy that I see on the streets at my muggle job 5 days a week. And imagine, for folks out there watching this, imagine if you never have anyone ever talk to you, ever. And there are people all around you walking about and going about their lives, and they never talk to you other than say either something negative or just kind of, basically something negative. But for the most part, they just don't, you exist in a world where you don't have anybody around. It's, I can't imagine that and what that does to you. Yeah. So, because I remember I gave him some food and he was kind of like, he said, thank you. And you could tell he was just so like uncomfortable, because someone actually took the time to actually talk to him, because I wanted to know like how long he'd been here and where does he go when it gets wet outside like it is now in the fall and these kind of things.
Okay, I have a question for you, and I hope you have an answer, or at least a perspective. What do we say to somebody that we walk by who is maybe, who looks obviously homeless, whether they are or not, I don't know, but in an unfortunate situation, do we just smile and say hello, or do we? How do we not do what you just said, is we just like to pretend that they don't exist?
Well, I can use this gentleman as an example, because I went up to him and said, hey, how you doing? I mean, it was that casual, and he didn't respond to me. He looked at me, but he didn't respond to me. And then I said, I see you here 5 days a week, every week. And is there anything that you could use for me right now?
That's so cool, because you're acknowledging him. You're asking him a question about how are you doing, but really you're not asking him how he's doing, because it's obvious how he's doing, not that well, but you're acknowledging that he exists.
Right, exactly. And then I put it on him to tell me, what could you use? Do you need food? Do you need clothes? Because if he asked me for money, I was going to say, that's one thing I can't give you. But I can get you a meal. I can get you a bottle of water. I can get you some, I can point you in the right direction. In my case, because I have connections to resources, which the average person probably doesn't. But point being, that's when you say, I haven't eaten in 3 days. So I'm like,
I'm trying to figure out where to be with the money thing. I'm trying to figure that one out still, because I do understand that a lot of the people that are, here where we live now are homeless, and they either have, whatever. There's so many reasons why they're on the street, but part of it is that there's serious drug addiction, and I don't want to contribute to that. But at the same time, somebody might just be freaking hungry. So how do you know what to do? And I haven't figured that one out yet. Sometimes I give money, sometimes I don't, but I don't know what to do.
Yeah, and honestly, Brie, I mean, that is a gray area, even for me too. Kind of depends on the day and the time. And also just the vibe I get from that person. Like, are they really just trying to put one over on me basically by asking for money, or do I see them with I don't know, like some sort of situation where they were actually doing okay? Maybe they were in a place and maybe they do even still have a job right now, but they're just not making ends meet, and that's why they're here in this tent or in this shelter kind of a thing. I don't think there is a clear answer of like, you know what, you deserve money and you don't. I just tend to lean toward most of the folks I've encountered, they're trying to use it for drug use. So I'm like, I just can't support that, but I can support you in all these other ways.
Well, I love the thing about, I would like to, because of what you said, and thank you so much for saying that, I would like to, grow the courage to at least acknowledge that they are a human being on this planet and saying, you know, hi, whatever. I don't even know what's next. You know, do I really want to say, how are you doing? I don't know, because I don't know if I can really do anything with that. That might be just too scary or too big of a question, but just say, you know, hi, I hope you're okay. I don't know, something, anything, because to become invisible, it's horrifying to become invisible and to feel like nobody gives a shit whether you're cold, you're in pain, you're hungry, you're, you know, whatever. Yeah, how horrible.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what goes through my head too when I see that, and I think about my own situation that it could be 5 decisions away from being this person myself.
Right, abso-freaking-lutely. I just found out that a guy I knew 30, 40 years ago who was a successful bass player in a band working with a woman who's a big celebrity now. We're just in touch because of Facebook, and I've just found out that he's homeless. You know, a working bass player. He just made a few decisions that put him in the situation he's in right now. But boy, that's just, that could happen to anybody. Yeah. So, and regardless of whether it could happen to me or not, it's not even the point. It's just that, you know, and maybe it won't be received well, but just to acknowledge that you are another human being on this planet with me, and I hope you feel well. I hope you're okay. I hope you will get better. Whatever. What, I don't even know. Maybe that's just enough just to say, I see you.
You know, I believe it is, because it's such a great start to. I'm thinking about a show I was at back in October where this guy was trying to hand out. It was some kind of thing. It wasn't newspaper. It was something he made basically to people in the line. And most people were like, "Get out of here! Blah blah blah! I don't want this, whatever." And he handed it to me and was asking for a donation. And I'm kind of like, "Well, what is this?" I actually asked him because I didn't actually know what it was. He was trying to describe there's like a flower that he had made out of some sort of things. And me being the way I am, because especially since I had time, I was like, "So how much money do you get from these? I mean, did anybody give you money from this line? How have you been doing this all day, all week, all month?" And the look of shock on his face of like someone's actually having a conversation with me about something. Is in my mind, I'm just kind of curious, because just that, like you were saying, if you kind of give them some time so that you can be present with them, maybe only be 15 seconds of your day, that might be a huge thing for them to actually stick around for another day themselves.
Yeah, just for somebody who nobody speaks to 24/7.
Yeah, I mean, it would be like a horrible Twilight Zone episode where everyone's living their lives around you, and you're just like, yeah, you don't exist.
Yeah,
that's horrible.
It's a tough one. Yeah, it's tough. We're very, very fortunate.
Yes, absolutely. The older you get, the more grateful I am for the things that maybe I took for granted. And my mom, who's probably watching this right now, taking me to shows when I was a teenager and even less than a teenager.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah, because folks, I was talking to Brie pre-show that my mom and I went to see Kiss last night, and that's the first band I ever saw in 1979. So it's such a full circle moment that here I am all these years later, and all these memories I have in my head from those shows, those early shows that I saw, were because of my mom. And Brie, something else, like my mom and I saw Diana Ross this summer, and my mom was telling me, which I didn't even know, that she saw the Supremes back in the day. And I'm like, what? I didn't know that.
Oh, so your mom loved going to see music.
Yeah, she saw Elvis, the Beatles, Motown stuff. That's definitely where I got it from.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, and my mom just came into the chat. She says, "Hi, Brie."
Hi, Mom. What's your mom's name?
Carol.
Hi, Carol.
Yeah, she's such a huge supporter. She either catches these live streams live, and if she's busy doing something, she watches it later. I don't think she's missed one.
Yeah, wonderful.
So very, very lucky. Well, Brie, I think that's a great place to kind of close things for the conversation tonight. It was such an amazing time talking with you, and you have such a great energy to you. I'm a big energy person, and I so loved what you brought to the table and everything else that you brought to this conversation. And like you were saying earlier, you can't put all of your songs into like all your experiences into the songs for one solo, and that you probably have to do several. That I feel like we could have another live stream in a month, and I have a bunch of other questions.
Let's do it. You know, I wanted to say to you too, you've inspired me in so many ways tonight. Just some of the things you know we talked about and your takes on things, and I just love it. And I'm coming away with more than I think I've ever left. So I just appreciate you so much.
Well, thank you so much for saying that. I so appreciate that, and I really, the feeling is mutual. That
Let's get together again. I'll be around, and I'll be further along with my record and whatever else I'm doing. That'd be awesome.
I love talking to guests again, and I will absolutely follow up with you to schedule a part 2, chapter 2.
Chapter 2.
Yeah, we'll have another live stream, and
this is
we'll
good
go out.
because it'll make me get busy. It's a goal to get busy with chapter 1.
There we go. And everybody in the chat, thank you for joining us and for your questions and just for being here. And yeah, you heard it. Brie and I will get back together, and hopefully you can join us at that point. Follow us on social media, and you'll kind of know when these things are coming up. But folks in the chat, thank you and have a good night. Brie, again, thank you so much. And I look forward to part 2 when we get a chance to.
Be a blast. Thank you. And thank you everybody for showing up and being here and supporting Mark.
All right. Good night, everybody. Stay safe out there.